Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today, we're excited to have Derek Brainard, National Director of Financial Education at AccessLex Institute, here with us to talk about student loans. Your Law School Toolbox host today is Alison Monahan, and typically I'm with Lee Burgess. We're here to demystify the law school and early legal career experience so that you'll be the best law student and lawyer you can be. Together, we're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. I also run the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always reach us via the contact form on lawschooltoolbox.com, and we would love to hear from you. With that, let's get started. Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today, we're excited to have Derek Brainard, National Director of Financial Education at AccessLex Institute, here to talk with us about everyone's favorite topic, student loans. Welcome, Derek.
Thanks for having me, Allison.
My pleasure. I'm really excited about this. I have some questions for you that relate to me. To kick things off, can you just give our listeners some basic info on your background and your current role so they've got some context here?
Absolutely. I'm actually a Navy vet. And so years ago when I got out of the Navy, I transitioned into a career into the financial services as a licensed financial advisor. And, you know, one of the things I liked most about that job was really communicating and educating. And so when the opportunity came about to jump into the higher education world and help inform and empower students to learn about their increase their financial literacy, increase their financial capability, and learn about what it really takes to be financially successful. And I jumped right on that, and of course that parlayed into a career in financial education and becoming an accredited financial counselor, a chartered retirement planning counselor, and now working with this wonderful nonprofit AccessLex Institute, which really has the mission of increasing the access, affordability, and value of a legal education for law students from all walks of life. So it's been, as most careers go, it's been a winding road, but I am privileged and happy to be teaching financial education on a daily basis to students from all over the country.
Nice. Well, there's definitely a need for that because I feel like we did not get a lot of that in law school.
Sure. Yeah. And we hear that every day. You know, we do coach students one-on-one virtually and over the phone. And one of the things we hear from recent grads and even those that have been out in the field for up to 10 years is just, geez, I wish this was around when I was first starting school. And if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I would be a very wealthy person.
I'm sure. Well, there's a lot going on in the student loan space right now with repayments that are getting ready to restart and also this big news that came out recently on possible loan forgiveness. Fingers crossed. Note we are recording this in mid-September. We do not have a crystal ball on any potential lawsuits, but we're, hoping and thinking that might happen. So tell me a little bit about these things.
Yeah, there really is a lot going on, and it kind of stems all the way back to March of 2020, believe it or not, when the COVID pandemic really hit and the CARES Act came into being. And part of that was this administrative forbearance or this pause on payments for federal student loans. And along with that came a 0% interest rate and a stopping of collections on defaulted loans. And so that's been in effect all the way sent back to March 2020, and it's been extended through the administrations, and it was just extended via this announcement from the Biden-Harris administration through the end of the year. So that's the first piece that will give people a few more months, right, just to get their feet under them as we come out of this pandemic, and hopefully start to put it behind us. But the part of this announcement that's grabbed most of the headlines, as you can imagine, is this piece on debt cancellation, in which they're saying, yep, up to $10,000 will be canceled for those who are falling under a certain income threshold, $125,000 for single filers and $250,000 for households. If you never received a Pell Grant, up to $20,000 if you did. And so that is something that is going to be enacted. And so as you can imagine, that's going to mean that's going to be relief for millions of borrowers across the country. In fact, they say about 8 million borrowers will automatically have that cancellation applied because they already have all the information that they need to do so. And for all the rest that won't have that automatic cancellation applied, it will be, it's said that they're going to release an online application in early October for those who, for folks to go on and just fill that out. And hopefully, it's short and sweet. They can fill out that application. And it's also been relayed through the guidance that people will have through the end of December 2023 to fill out that application. Although, from a timing perspective, borrowers are being encouraged to fill out that online application by the middle of November to have the cancellation applied before the payment pause lifts at the end of the year. So that is obviously the piece that's grabbed a lot of headlines, and probably justifiably so, since it was the promise that President Biden campaigned on, and now we're seeing that promise fulfilled through this action. So that is the second part of that announcement. The third part of that announcement that hasn't gotten a lot of attention yet, but I think will get a lot of attention as it kind of becomes more clear, is the piece on income-driven repayment plans.
True.
And how those can be reformed to lower payments even further than they already are under the current system. So that's what the announcement kind of entailed. That's on top of a couple different other layers of announcements that have come out over the past few months in terms of public service loan forgiveness and whatnot.
Yeah, actually, would you mind just talking a little more about both of those things, the income-based repayment and the public service loan forgiveness? Because I know that one at least seems to be kind of time limited. I mean, I have loans and I got a pop-up telling me like, hey, you should be aware of this. And I'm like, I had no idea. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so public service loan forgiveness, okay, that's a program, again, that's always in the news, right? And for good reason. It's been around now for a while, and it's a program that exists for people who are working in public service careers that may not be making as much money as their counterparts in the private sector. And in the legal world, you think of public interest careers versus corporate or big law careers, and you think about the salary disparities and how those in public interest are working with more of a modest starting salary, and so yet they still are borrowing for law school and coming out with the average debt load that their private and big law counterparts are. So how do we tackle that? And so this program was created to help enable those folks to go into those careers that are desperately needed and still follow kind of their passion about the work that they do on a daily basis, while at the same time enabling them to have a financial quality of life by lowering their monthly payments to match their discretionary income, and having those payments count as long as they're working for a qualified employer toward public service loan forgiveness. And so income, you have to think about it in two different ways. Income-driven repayment plans are available to everybody. Those plans that were created to help folks make payments based on their discretionary income. All somebody would have to do to get onto one of those plans is go to studentaid.gov/IDR and fill out the income-driven repayment certification form. And that form just basically conveys your adjusted gross income to your loan servicer, lets them know how much you made. They run it through a formula where they ignore currently 150% of the federal poverty guideline for a household of your size in the state that you live. And what's left, they call your discretionary income. And then based on the plan that you choose, of which there are several in current existence, they could set your payment at 10, 15, or 20% of your discretionary income. So that's income-driven repayment, and really anybody can use those plans that has federal student loans. Now add on top of that public service loan forgiveness. Public service loan forgiveness is a program that people that are working for eligible employers like government, nonprofit 501c3s, and other types of nonprofit that do public interest work, as long as they're working up to full time for those eligible employers, and making on-time scheduled payments on their direct loans under one of those income-driven repayment plans. They're checking all the boxes, and they're certifying their payments every year with their employers, and sending in what's called the PSLF form to the servicer for the program, which is now MOHELA. As long as they're checking the boxes and sending in that PSLF form every year, then they're tracking towards public service loan forgiveness. And generally, that's a 120-month process if you do it straight. So 10 years, right? So if you make 120 monthly payments and do it all the way straight, it's 10 years. So you have your income-driven repayment plans. You have your public service loan forgiveness. That's a program that runs kind of side by side with those plans. What happened was the Biden administration recognized that, geez, you know what? The vast majority of people that started applying for public service loan forgiveness in recent years were being denied. So they were starting to say, well, what's the cause of these denials? What can be done to help rectify this promise and fulfill this promise that was made to people working in these professions all those years ago? And so one of the things they did was they created a limited time waiver, a PSLF limited waiver that's good through the end of October 2022. So about, as you said, at the time of this recording, I got to know about another month and a half, but the deadline is October 31, 2022 for folks who have historically made payments on maybe the wrong kind of loans. Maybe they were making payments on FFEL loans instead of direct loans, right?
Yeah, I just found out that I have these, and I'm kind of irate because I've actually been paying on them since 2020, this whole time, paying interest, and I realized that didn't need to happen, and I had no idea.
So part of this confusion around the public service loan forgiveness and why the program applications have been denied kind of on a mass scale is, part of that reason is, it's a massive program that is complicated and logistically hard to administer. Okay, so there's no doubt about that. There is differing information coming depending on what sources you ask about how the program works. But then there's also just lack of wide-scale education, or anyways, there had been lack of wide-scale education and awareness about the program. So to your point, Allison, like, geez, I've been making payments on these loans, and I just found out maybe I didn't have to be. And that's under a different type of thing. If you had FFEL loans that were held by the Department of Ed, those were on administrative forbearance for the past 2 years. You didn't have to be making payments, and still those periods of non-payment would have counted towards these public service loan forgiveness payments of 120. So there's a couple issues that had come up into the public eye about the program that the administration has really tried to go back and cast a net and say, you know what, we want to fix this. So anybody that has been making payments on the wrong kinds of federal loans, maybe they're FFEL loans, you can turn those into direct loans by putting them into a direct consolidation loan and then fill out the PSLF form. And as long as you do those things by the end of October, then we can get you in under this limited time waiver. Maybe you were making payments under the wrong plan. Remember what I said just a minute ago, the eligible plan for public service loan forgiveness is these income-driven repayment plans. And ironically, the 10-year standard plan. But in general, for the cash flow flexibility and to have actual loans left to forgive, you would have been making payments on these income-driven repayment plans, not, an extended term plan or a graduated plan or another type of plan like this. So maybe you fall into that camp where you've been making payments, but they're on the quote-unquote wrong type of plan. Well, this limited waiver gives you the ability to go back in time using the PSLF form at studentaid.gov/PSLF and fill out that form, have your past employers certify your periods of employment, and have those payments now retroactively count towards your 120 payments for forgiveness. So thankfully, this limited waiver seems to have been working because there has been many people that have utilized it and had their debt wiped as a result under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So that being said, that limited waiver is slated to expire at the end of October. So,
get on that. If anyone's listening to this, we will definitely put this out as soon as possible. And if
okay.
anyone's listening to it, get those ducks in a row, because this could be a big deal for people, even if apparently, maybe in the past you worked like 4 or 5 years at a qualifying employer, and then maybe, you want to go ahead and sort of get that in the books in case you decide to move back to one. I mean, that's another way that maybe people don't get it forgiven yet, but they could kind of set themselves up for the future.
They can get on the track. They can get on the
Yeah.
track towards public service loan forgiveness. And, we always give the disclaimer that if you have these older FFEL loans that you've been paying on for a while, one of the steps towards getting on the track towards public service loan forgiveness is you have to consolidate them into a new direct consolidation loan. So we always do give the disclaimer to make sure that you understand how those direct consolidation loans work, and that there are pros and cons to consolidation, especially if doing so wouldn't have you at the 120 payments already. Like if you still
Right.
had payments left, now you have a new loan, and you have to think about what are the terms of that loan, what is the repayment plan, and so on and so forth. So if you fall into that camp, we do have a free financial coaching service that we offer, and we talk to currently working legal professionals all the time on this service, called Access Connects. And that's some information that maybe, Allison, if you're open to it, we can put in show notes, or I can just say right now.
Definitely.
The URL for that is accesslex.org/accessconnects, all one word. And so we'll get the word out on that, because you can definitely feel free to utilize that to schedule a free call with one of our accredited financial counselors, and we'll just help you weigh your options. It's not financial advice, it's walking through the scenarios and making sure you have the information you need to make an informed decision.
No, I literally might actually call you guys up, because
That'd be
after I
great.
found this out last week, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, because it's a very bizarre thing, where you just sort of think, "Oh, they're just," I would log in and be like, "Why am I not getting the 0%?" And they're like, "Oh, because your loan starts with a D," and it's like, "Oh, okay, it starts with a D." But what does that mean? I don't know. Like, is there any way it doesn't? Would it qualify? So there are a lot of questions.
There are a lot, and that's the thing, is we can put out the information, and people can go to studentaid.gov and they can read FAQs on this all day long. But at the end of the day, what people really find value in is, how do we break this down into how it practically applies to my situation and what I should be doing next.
Right.
And those are the conversations that we're having all the time, literally with thousands of borrowers across the country each year. So it's been a very busy time for that coaching service the past few months, as you
Sure.
can imagine. I mean, and we're happy to do it. And we try to stay on top of all of the announcements, the guidance, and everything that's coming. But sometimes there are daily updates to this guidance, especially with regard to the student loan relief plan that was just announced. How is that going to come into effect? How is that going to come into play? When is the application going to be released? And once it is, what other nuances are going to come up that people are going to be running into that are just not being talked about right now, or are hard to predict? Unfortunately, as you said, we don't have a crystal ball, and we wish we did. So we do the best we can with the information that's out there. Sometimes it's just helpful for folks to have somebody walk with them through this. So
Oh,
that's
definitely.
what we've been doing.
Well, that sounds like a very valuable service. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about something that happens pretty frequently. So, often your loans are going to be sold to a different servicer. How does this work, and what, if anything, do people need to know or do if this happens?
Yeah, so student loans come in a couple different flavors, right? There's the federal student loans that come from the Department of Education, and there's private student loans that come from banks and other lenders. In both cases, your servicer can change, and you don't really have any say over that most of the time, right? It's more of a, if a service, for example, a lot of, some of the bigger servicers have gotten out of the industry in the federal student loan space and have transferred their loans that they were servicing over to other servicers. And the big example is, FedLoan was the national servicer for public service loan forgiveness, and they are no longer going to be doing that. They're transferring, and have transferred over already, many of their borrowers to Mohila with an M. So if you are in that boat, you've probably gotten communications from both FedLoan and Mohila, and probably the Department of Ed, that this is happening. And on the private side, it certainly can happen as well. A lender can move you to another lender or servicer to help service your loans. And here's the bottom line: is whenever this happens, just know that it should not impact the terms of your loan. All that's changing is who is collecting your payments and the website that you're going to log into to make those payments. So the general kind of advice here is go onto your current portal, go onto your current website, take screenshots, document phone calls and conversations via email. Make sure you have all the details of your loans inventoried so that if this type of thing does happen in this sort of shifting servicer landscape, you have a good record of what should be there and what should be accounted for. Things can get lost in translation, and so in this way you can be your own best advocate. But again, the terms of your loans themselves, the interest rates, the repayment plans, those should remain unchanged and transferred. Does it always happen seamlessly? No, and that's why you have to just be on top of it. And certainly if you do get moved to a new servicer, call them. Double check that you're on the right repayment plan that you had been on your previous servicer, if and when the time comes, and make sure that. And the other big thing is auto debits, auto enrollments, auto payments. A lot of times that's something that may not transfer. So if you were on auto payment on your old servicer and you get moved to a new one, you might have to go through another setup to get your auto payments moving. For many people with federal loans, this doesn't apply until January, right? Because that's when we go back into repayment. But for those with private loans who haven't been on a forbearance all this time, it could be something that you've already had to deal with.
Right. Yeah, I think the key is you really have to stay on top of this, and you may not find a lot of information on the actual websites. I was shocked, actually. I logged onto mine. I'm like, this doesn't even tell me what type of loan I have. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, I have to know where to dig, and that's a part of the webinars and the education that we're putting out is just helping people understand where to look. When you log into studentaid.gov, now studentaid.gov has undergone a pretty substantial overhaul and streamlining the dashboard and making it easier for folks to treat it as sort of a one-stop shop. And so they're making some great strides there, but you have to know just where to click, to view loan details versus view servicer details, and then every private lender's portal will vary, right? And every servicer on the federal level's website varies in terms of how it looks and where you have to go to navigate certain things. So it's no wonder it definitely takes some time getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty informed person, and I have absolutely no idea. Like, I don't know how much money I owe. I don't really know who I owe it to. Like, it's just auto-debiting. I don't know why it's still been auto-debiting this whole time. The whole thing is just very confusing. So thank you for enlightening us on some of this.
Well, absolutely. And at the end of the day, if you need like an easy sort of cheat sheet for federal loans, studentaid.gov, log in using your FSA ID, and it should be a full inventory of your loans.
Great.
At the federal level. For private loans, annualcreditreport.com, and pulling those credit reports and just seeing what loans are out there reported under your Social Security number is the most comprehensive way to go. And it's a good practice anyways, from time to time, just to make sure the data being reported under your name is accurate and clean.
True. And if you ever apply for a mortgage, you will find out all kinds of things like this.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And especially, and we talked to law students who are going through character and fitness determinations about making sure that data is clean, because, they don't want any red flags when it comes to that process. They don't want to have that be a barrier to character and fitness. So that is something we do talk with law students about a lot.
Nice. Well, let's switch gears a little bit before we wrap up and actually talk a bit more generally about law school finances.
Sure.
Do you have any budgeting or other advice that you like to give to law students?
We do. And we just came out of a very busy season traveling to law schools all over the country and speaking at orientations and helping students set up their law school budgets. And some of the key points in that conversation really revolve around knowing how much it costs to be you, right? To pay the rent, to grocery shop, to meal prep, to eat out if that's what you're doing throughout the week, for transportation, and you have to get to that monthly number. And I think that is, it's kind of budgeting 101, but it is a really important exercise, especially if you're moving to a new city to go to law school or your situations are changing year to year. Going back to that monthly number, how much does it cost to be you for a month? Take that number, match it against the school's, your financial aid award letter and the cost of attendance at the school to determine how much of what's being offered you have to borrow. I think a lot of times we go on to sort of autopilot when we see that promissory note or we see that cost of attendance. We say, okay, well, if that's how much I can take, that's how much I will take. And the one of our key educational messages is just because you can borrow it doesn't mean that you have to. And if you don't need to, certainly it's money that won't be sitting and accruing interest, right? Once interest starts to accrue again, and it'll save you a lot of money over the course of a loan repayment plan to really borrow only what you need. And, understanding that if you do need to borrow up to the full cost of attendance minus any scholarships, et cetera, and that's okay too. But as long as you're kind of doing so in a really informed way. And so we talk about the cost of attendance. We talk about getting that monthly budget down using two different approaches, whether it's a line item budget, where you're really spelling out each individual expense and where the money's coming from via student loan refunds or any sort of, summer work or part-time work, where you get it. And, matching that, juxtaposing that against like maybe more of a bucket approach where you just spell out, hey, here's how much I want to put towards my needs, my wants, and maybe some savings for down the road for the bar exam. So there are different methods that we discuss with law students all the time when it comes to budgeting. The other key point that we really do talk a lot about is making sure that the money that you're getting lasts all year. So when you have your cost of attendance that you see and you see, okay, this is how much I can take in terms of a student loan refund for the semester and how much I can take is for student loan refunds for the year. That number is based on a 9-month academic year. It's not based on a 12-month calendar year typically. So what inevitably happens is students get to the summer and they run out of money, right? If they're living primarily on student loan refunds, and they're saying, geez, now I have to take a paid summer experience to survive this summer, right? And so what we teach is, if you need that money to last 12 months because maybe you want to go into an unpaid summer experience to get your foot in the door somewhere to really test out a field, but that opportunity is unpaid, you would need to have some money left over from your academic year to do it. So we tell students, if you're getting those student loan refunds, divide them by 12. Or if you're getting them every semester, as most people do, divide it by 6 and just live off of 1/6 or 1/12 and put the rest in a savings account so you can kind of siphon it to yourself as income throughout the year. And you just have to decide, is that, if you match it up against your budget, is that enough? Is that enough to live on, or do you have to make other decisions with regard to cutting expenses, trying to find alternate forms of income, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I definitely remember, kind of going into the summer and being like, oh my gosh, we're pretty much out of money. Like me and all of my roommates, you're putting everything on the credit cards. And then I was lucky enough to actually work as a summer associate several times. And it was like, oh, when is that first paycheck coming? Because now I have this, credit card bill that I've been building up for the last 6 weeks that I really have to pay off.
Yeah, I know, right? And it puts you in a really stressful situation. And so a lot of what we're talking about is just being aware of what's coming up front.
Yeah.
And even if it does happen, it just makes you feel better knowing that, oh, you know what? I knew this was going to happen and I took some steps to plan for it. It's kind of like when you're flying and the pilot says, hey, everybody, there's going to be turbulence.
Right.
So I'm going to put the fasten seatbelt sign on. And then the turbulence hits, but you're not really upset about it because they told you it was going to happen. It's not as scary as if it hit without you knowing.
Right. No, I think that's key. As long as you have a plan and you sort of know what you're going to do,
right.
Much better than just sort of finding yourself in a situation where you can't pay rent.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. Any final thoughts you would like to share here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to your statement more toward the beginning of our conversation, Allison, and that's, these are things that a lot of people wish that they had known when they started their legal education, and we hear the same thing from legal professionals. I wish I had known that there was a 401k available to me with matching contributions. I would have been contributing the match for the past 5 years, 10 years, because that's free money that's on the table, right? If you just put it into your 401k. There are so many things that fall into that category when it comes to personal finance that I would just encourage all your listeners to reach out to the resources that are available, set a free financial coaching call through Access Connects if that's what you'd like to do to talk about your specific situation, and just ask, what is it that I don't know that I should be asking? And And yourself and myself and my team will all be happy to share those pieces of information with your listeners.
Great. And if people wanted to find out more about AccessLex or this AccessLex Connect, can you just remind them how to do that?
Absolutely. So accesslex.org is our main site, and that's AccessLex, all one word, .org. And if you go to accesslex.org, and you can either search for Access Connects, and that's Connects, CONNEX, all one word, or go to accesslex.org/accessconnects. You can schedule a free coaching call via there. And we have lots of resources at that site. We do have a full webinar schedule for student loan repayment and public service loan forgiveness webinars. And we have a whole page dedicated to resources for recent graduates and new lawyers. So really, there's a little bit of something for everybody. If you're listening to this podcast and you are just thinking about law school as a pre-law student, we have the Ask Edna Education Network at AccessLex, which is a free portal with tons of resources as well that you can access through our site. So really, there is a little bit of something for everybody. We like to say from admission to law school to admission to the bar, we really do have resources for those folks.
Nice. That sounds great. Well, with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode of the Law School Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. We would really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to Lee or Alison at lee@lawschooltoolbox.com or allison@lawschooltoolbox.com, or you can always contact us via our website contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.